Welcome to Assembly Calendar. I'm Ted Flint. With us today, Assemblyman Al Graf, who serves the 5th Assembly District, which includes Suffolk County. Assemblyman Graf, nice to see you.
Thanks for having me.
Very early in the 2014 legislative session, the governor unveiled his State of the State message recently, and why don't we take a look at what he proposed. It's kind of an outline, a blueprint, where he would like to see the state go. And then we'll come back and comment with Assemblyman Al Graf.
No matter how you look at it, New Yorkers don't just pay a high property tax, they pay the highest property tax in the United States of America. Literally, the highest property tax in the country is in Westchester County, in absolute dollars. When you look at by percentage of home value, the highest costs are in upstate New York.
I agree with property tax relief. I think the best way to get it is actually to reduce the cost to school districts and counties and local towns and villages. I don't think it's the fault of local government that property taxes are so high in our state. It's about Albany mandates and forcing localities to pay for it through the local taxpayers.
When it comes to Common Core, what happened to our advocate for the children? Our children throughout this whole state, parents throughout this whole state, educators throughout this whole state have been screaming for help. And this governor locked and bolted the door and told the kids there are no reliefs for you. However, we're going to give you new shiny computers, but don't worry about it. You're not going to be able to do the curriculum anyway. I mean, this was a disgrace. This governor should be ashamed of himself. This was a harsh reality check for the people of New York State, and this was nothing more than a kickoff of his future campaign. And the people of this state should tell this governor no.
Well, you don't sit many fences on Common Core. Where are we on Common Core?
Well, let's go to the governor's budget first.
All right.
If you listen to his budget, he didn't mention Long Island once. Okay, so I guess he forgot that Long Island was part of New York State, but I'm sure he's going to find us when it comes time to pay the bill. If you looked at some of his programs, for instance, there are so many strings attached to his property tax relief, nobody's going to get it. Okay, in Suffolk County, the Suffolk County legislature would have to vote to dissolve themselves. That's not going to happen. These new computers that they're talking about for the schools, where he's going to bond out $1 billion, he decides where the computers go. You think that New York State is going, or Long Island is going to see any of them computers? Absolutely not. But we're going to have to help pay for the bond. Now he gets into pre-K. Here he comes. He's going to fund pre-K kindergarten. Your problem here is there are schools out here with only half a day kindergarten, and there are schools with no kindergarten. So research has shown that pre-K, there is no benefit from pre-K if you don't have kindergarten right away. So these kids are going to take a year off. So I don't know who's filling his ear. I don't know where he's getting these proposals from. But I mean, they're great on sound bites, but short on substance. As far as the Common Core is concerned, look, I toured the state. We did 11 forums on Common Core. And we heard from parents, we heard from educators, administrators, we heard from children that came up. I have a degree in elementary education. I looked at the modules that the state put forward. I don't know who wrote them, but they were never in a classroom. They have no experience in education. They were not edited. There were misspellings. There were grammatical errors. They would say circle the trees, and there were no trees. They didn't take in consideration kids with IEPs, individual education plans, which by law they have to use those, and they ignore them. They have children with severe disabilities sitting for 90-minute tests for 3 days. All right, we had one teacher that actually testified that she had to administer this test to a group of children, all with IEPs. And normally what happens is because of whatever their disability may be, the teacher can guide them a little bit, may be able to read it. They're not taking a test for them, read it, tell them to think about it, calm them down. And in this case, they weren't allowed to do it. And the kids were looking up at her with tears in their eyes. And she's saying, do your best, do your best. Finally, she looked off to the side and she realized that this one little boy wasn't writing anything on the paper. So she walked over to him, and the child was stabbing himself with a pencil. That's how frustrated he was. And she took the pencil away from him. And she told him that it wasn't important. And she said this with tears in her eyes. There were people in the audience crying. And it's unbelievable. I just don't get it. I don't get what the governor doesn't get. I don't get what the Board of Regents doesn't get. I don't get what the Commission of Education doesn't get. If you take a look at the curriculum as they propose it, this is the worst garbage that I've ever seen. If you wanted to destroy public education, this is what you would do. And it's a disgrace. And this governor has been hiding. This governor sat there and he said that he was the advocate for the children, right? Had a big sign on his door in the last State of the State. Yeah, how'd that work out? He's been absent. I actually did a poster with "Where's Waldo?" and put the governor's head on it and gave all his contact information for people to give him a call. You know, and getting away from that, there are so many issues facing the state right now. The other day I had the head of the Department of Criminal Justice for the state in front of me, and we started talking about the heroin epidemic and about how our first responders are constantly going to young people that have overdosed and young people that have died. Our crime rate is going up because of this. I mean, you're seeing violent crime, robberies, and this isn't just New York City. This isn't Long Island. This is every part of the state.
Yeah.
And what shocked me was he looked at me and goes, "Yeah, this is becoming a problem." I go, "It's becoming a problem. It is a problem."
That's right.
So I'm looking at things that we can do to actually try to break the backs of the people that are bringing it in. Years ago when Rudolph Giuliani was a prosecutor, he went after the mafia with RICO. And basically anyone who was at the top, they built cases under a RICO prosecution. RICO prosecution is like an organized crime.
Yeah.
So it's people that come together to commit a crime for profit. That's what we have here. We need to tap into all our law enforcement throughout the entire state. We need to say, listen, give us one of your narcotics experts, right, from the city police department, from Suffolk, from Nassau, from all the police departments throughout the state. We need to tap into the corrections. They have a list of the hierarchy of the gangs, right? We need to know a couple prosecutors to put the case together, right? The state troopers, bring them in. But basically start putting together enough intelligence to start bringing RICO prosecutions. Because there's when you get down to it, there's a group of people that are bringing this in.
Did they
in
know
large
who?
numbers.
Do you know? I mean, the heroin.
The heroin.
Yeah.
We don't know who, but what we need to do is we really need to attack this, and we need to go after it like Giuliani went after the mafia when he was a prosecutor. And now if you want to know who the head of the mafia is, right, they're not raising their head out there, because it's, the bottom line is they know as soon as they pop up, they're going to jail.
Mm-hmm.
So, and for a long time, life sentence. So we have to get serious about this. We have young kids that are dying. We have families that are being torn apart, right? We have communities that are being affected by it. And, what happens is the kids, they're out there taking oxycodone, and all of a sudden they figure out it's $60 a pill. They can't afford it anymore.
Yeah, the heroin's very affordable, right?
Well, what happens is after a while they tell them if you snort the heroin, okay, it's a lot cheaper. So they start snorting it. After that, they're not getting the high they want. They have to do more and more. They go, if you shoot it, you get the same high, right? And it's really cheap. And once they shoot it, you're done. I mean, I was a police officer. I saw the effects that heroin could have. I don't think there's anybody out there right now who doesn't know someone or know a family who's going through this where, they're being forced to kick their children out of the house because other children are in the house. You have these kids stealing from their parents and everyone else in order to feed the habit. It's bad. And I mean, it's not something that we can ignore. It's something that we have to move forward with. And we have to really put in an action plan in order to say that if you bring this garbage into New York State, okay, the financial benefit that you gain is not going to be worth, right, the penalties once we get you and put the handcuffs on you. So, I mean, there are a lot of issues facing the state. It's not just Common Core. Common Core, I've been the leader of that. I've been going all over.
Yeah.
And I know 6 months ago nobody wanted to talk about it, but now it's the #1 topic.
It's hot.
So-
There's a groundswell of support to do something about it. As long as we're speaking at Common Core, we have you at a press conference on this issue. Let's take a look at that before we run out of time. With Assemblyman Al Graf.
You know, I've heard about how we're going to expand women's rights. We did have the opportunity to expand women's rights, not only last year, but again this year. I have 2 daughters. It's important to me. You have a trafficking bill, which is very important. There are a lot of things that are important. But what we have today is a political I gotcha. That's all this is, because we're not given any more rights. Women already have the rights in the 10th point. This is already the law. But what we're doing is there's a political shell game being played here, and the purpose of this is you are holding hostage the 9 points that will actually be new law to help women, okay? Just to be able to score a political point to say that some people voted against women's agenda, the women's agenda. That's anything but the truth. And if you search your soul, you'll see that. So with that, I'll be voting in the negative again.
That was a package of bills, women's equality.
Yeah,
bills.
well, that was the wrong video. That wasn't the Common Core video,
Right.
but we can talk about that also. Last year, what happened is there was a women's agenda, and there were very good bills in it. And the Senate broke the bills into 10 different bills that they could vote on, or 9 different bills. And they passed 9 bills. Well, the Assembly is playing games. So the last piece was the abortion piece. And the abortion piece, they didn't give anybody any more rights. It was a nice soundbite for them. And what they want to do is they want to be able to have their candidates come out and say that people voted against women's agenda, the women's agenda. That's nonsense. What happens is they're playing political games here, all right? They're looking for the next election. Now, if they would, it's got to pass the Senate too, and it's not going to pass the Senate. So the second that they voted for this bill, that bill was dead. All right, it's gone. There is. And meanwhile, they held 9 very important bills that really protected women. I have 2 daughters, okay? And these bills went a long way into protecting my daughters. And what they did in the majority of the Assembly was they sat there and they took these 9 bills that were so important and held them hostage just to get a political soundbite. To be honest with you, it's disgusting. You know, and they're going to come out, and you're going to see it the next election cycle. They're going to walk up and say, he voted against the women's agenda. That's not true. In actuality, they voted against the women's agenda because we would have voted for all 9 bills, and all 9 bills would have went before the Senate. I mean, you had trafficking bills, so many other important bills, and they're just playing a political, I gotcha, political games, you know, and sometimes they do that, and sometimes, you know, they're more concerned with trying to win elections than doing what's right for the people they represent.
Why not let each one of those bills be voted on based on their own merit?
Because then you can't get the political spin out of it that you want. Look, I come from a very easy philosophy. I do what I think is right, and if people aren't happy with what I'm doing, then they'll vote me out. You know, but the bottom line is every morning I got to look in the mirror. I got to be able to look at myself, and I've got to be proud of what I've tried to do for the people of this state. But when other people have to play political garbage or political I got you, you know, I think they should be called on it.
All right, that's going to be the last word with Assemblyman Al Graf. We want to thank you, Assemblyman, for joining us. We will see you soon. Keep up the good work. Thank you for joining us on this edition of Assembly Calendar. We'll see you soon. I'm Ted Flynn.